Shut up. I'm the one in charge of this family. You need to put me first, no matter what. Bart's fever isn't a big deal. I was stunned by what he just said. How could you say that? As a parent, you should value your own child above everything else. Why can't you understand that? My husband Bart then said something I couldn't believe. The one who brings in the money is the greatest. That means the first priority in this house should be me. If you can't live with that, then get out. In that moment, something snapped inside me. Fine, I'll leave. Yeah, go ahead and leave, he sneered. You wouldn't survive without my salary anyway. My name is Rachel, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. My husband Bart and I have been married for 5 years. We have a 3-year-old son named David, and we live together as a family of 3. Things were good with Bart at first, but lately, his arrogance has been driving me crazy. We met on a blind date, and I was immediately attracted to him. He had a stable job and a bright, cheerful personality. He seemed to like me too, and we started dating right away. After a year, we got married. In the beginning, Bart was kind and caring. He even helped with housework and celebrated our wedding anniversary and my birthday. But as time passed, he started treating me with disrespect. I tried to convince myself that it was normal for the passion to fade as the marriage went on, but his behavior became too cold. Hey, why haven't you ironed my shirt? He'd bark. And when I wake up, you better have my socks and everything ready. I struggled to take care of David, and it was exhausting. You're not a child, Bart. You should at least be able to get your own clothes ready. What? He snapped. How dare you defy your husband? Because of me, you get to live this comfortable life. Bart constantly tried to make me do everything around the house, and when I refused, he'd get angry, saying, I'm the one who provides for you, so you better obey me. He likes to think of himself as a mature husband, but to me, he's just a child throwing a tantrum when things don't go his way. His behavior changed after our son was born, making it hard for me to consider divorce right away. But I had another major issue with Bart. He barely contributed to the family budget. Despite earning $2,500 a month, he only gave $500, claiming it should be enough. The rest of his salary went to his clothes, golf, and other hobbies. It was nowhere near enough, and we couldn't save for retirement or even afford David's future education. No matter how much I pleaded, Bart would just say, I'm giving you what I think is enough. That's final. Make do with it. I tried reasoning with him, but it was useless. He wouldn't listen, and every conversation ended in an argument. Why had Bart become like this? I desperately asked him to put more money into the family budget for David's sake and our future, but he never listened, and we always ended up fighting. Despite his lack of financial support, he constantly criticized my housework. It was impossible for 2 adults and a child to survive on just $500 a month. So I had no choice but to cook small portions or make cheap, easy meals with the most affordable ingredients. We often ate the same dish repeatedly because of this. But even then, Bart would complain, saying, You're a useless wife who can't even cook properly. Our relationship was deteriorating rapidly. I thought I had been handling everything pretty well, at least until David turned 3. But then something happened that made me realize I had finally reached the end of my patience. One evening, David was unusually quiet, and I suspected something was wrong. I placed my hand on his forehead and felt that he was burning up. Alarmed, I took his temperature and saw that he had a high fever. Without hesitation, I rushed him to the hospital. It was late, so we had to go to the emergency room. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't great. There were many patients, and we had to wait a long time. We'll be called soon. Hang in there, I reassured David, who was clearly in pain, as we sat in a waiting room. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor finally called us in. He examined David, gave me some medicine, and sent us home. Once we got back, I prepared a simple meal for David, gave him his medicine, and put him to bed, cooling his forehead with a damp cloth. I felt a small sense of relief wash over me. It was the highest fever David had ever had, and the whole ordeal left me exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Just as I was about to collapse on the couch, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Bart was home. I'm home, he announced. Welcome home, I replied, trying to muster some energy. Hey, where's my dinner? He demanded. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll make it now, I said, struggling to get up and head to the kitchen. What do you mean? Bart snapped. Huh? I was confused. You think I'm an idiot, don't you? He continued, his voice rising. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to stay calm. Then why isn't my dinner ready? He barked. I'm sorry, David had a high fever, and we had to go to the hospital. I haven't even had dinner myself yet, I explained as calmly as possible, hoping to avoid a fight. But Bart wouldn't listen. You've got to be kidding me, he said, clearly not caring about what had happened with David. At that moment, I realized just how little patience I had left. I don't care if you've eaten or not, just make sure my dinner is ready, Bart demanded, his tone harsh and dismissive. I stared at him in disbelief. How can you say that? David just had a sudden fever, you know. Shut up. I'm the one in charge of this family. You need to put me first, no matter what. Bart's fever isn't a big deal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could you say that? As a parent, you should value your own child above everything else. Why can't you understand that? Normally, when you find out your child has been taken to the hospital with a high fever, the first thing you do is worry about them. But instead of showing any concern, Bart said something unbelievable. The one who brings in the money to this family is the most important. That means I come first in this house. If you can't accept that, then get out. Something snapped inside me at that moment. No matter how disappointed I'd been in Bart, a small part of me had always hoped he would go back to being the kind husband he once was. But it was clear now there was nothing left to hope for. He was finished as a parent, unable to put his own child first. I couldn't accept his mentality that the one who earns more money is somehow more valuable. Fine, I said, my voice steady. I'll leave. Yeah, get out, Bart responded, indifferent to what he was losing. You wouldn't survive without my salary anyway, Bart sneered. Well then, I'll be eating out tonight. You should just go back to your parents' house and cool off. With that, Bart left the house, leaving me to wonder if he really thought I was just a helpless housewife incapable of doing anything on my own. But I was determined to prove him wrong. While Bart was gone, I packed my bags. David still had a fever, so I decided to wait until he felt better before making any moves. I got everything ready to leave at the first opportunity, then went into the room where David was sleeping to care for him. The next morning, David's fever had finally gone down, and he was still peacefully asleep. After wiping off the sweat and dressing him, I headed to the kitchen for breakfast, only to run into Bart on his way to work. He smirked when he saw me. What, you haven't left yet? I can't until David is feeling better, I replied calmly. You can't really afford to leave, can you? You're just a jobless housewife. You're doomed, he laughed before walking out the door. His words fueled my anger even more. How had he become such a horrible man? When we were dating and early in our marriage, he had been at least a little kinder and more considerate. What had happened to that man? As I stood there, lost in thought, my son woke up. Mom, I'm hungry. Are you feeling better now? I asked, concerned. Yeah, I'm feeling much better, he said with a smile. Seeing that David was better, I knew it was time to act. After breakfast, I called my parents and asked them to pick us up. I packed our things into their car, and by mid-afternoon, we were already at my parents' house. The moment I stepped inside, all the strength I had been holding onto seemed to drain away. I felt dizzy and almost fainted, which worried my parents. Are you okay, Rachel? They asked, concern etched on their faces. Yes, I'm sorry, I replied, trying to steady myself. I think I've been trying to stay strong this whole time to protect both David and myself. Wow, Bart must have really put you through a lot, my mom said, her face full of concern. Yeah, it was definitely more than just moral harassment, I replied, the weight of the truth sinking in. It was that bad, huh? My dad asked, clearly shocked. Before I could respond, David called out, Grandpa, let's play together. Yes, my dad said with a smile. Let's do that. How about we go buy some snacks? Oh, snacks. I want some, David exclaimed, his excitement contagious. My dad took David outside, giving me a much-needed break. You should lie down and rest, my mom said as she handed me a blanket. Thank you, I said, grateful for her kindness as I curled up under the blanket and drifted off to sleep. When I woke up a few hours later, the evening had settled in, and the house was filled with the delicious aroma of my mom's cooking. I made my way to the dining table, where a colorful array of dishes awaited us, each one looking more appetizing than the last. The reason Bart came over was definitely not to apologize. When I later heard from Dad, he confirmed that Bart hadn't even mentioned the word sorry. I knew without a doubt that after 2 weeks, Bart was just trying to get me back because he couldn't handle the housework on his own and the house had become a mess. But that was no longer my problem. I hoped he was finally realizing how hard it is to manage a household. He used to help with the chores, so he just needed to remember what he used to do. I guess he had forgotten because he was so out of practice. When I first returned to my parents' house, I blocked Bart's number, leaving him with no way to contact me except by showing up in person. I didn't go back to him. Instead, I stayed with David at my parents' house. During that time, Bart visited several times, but each time my dad sent him away. A month passed after I left with David. Finally, Bart reached his breaking point. Desperate, he pleaded with my father, bowing low, "Please, let me see your daughter. Please." I decided it was time to face him, so I asked Dad to let Bart into the living room. Meanwhile, my mom took David to the back room. When Bart walked in, I was shocked by how much he had changed. He looked terrible. His hair was unkempt, and his clothes were dirty and shabby. He had come straight from work, still in his suit, but it was so wrinkled that it looked like he had slept in it. "Hey, Rachel, you've had enough now, right? Just come home," he said, as if nothing had happened. Hearing those words, any remaining hope I had vanished. My feelings toward him solidified into an unbreakable wall of iron. I knew I needed to get away from this person as soon as possible. Bart, clearly frustrated, snapped, "I don't know what you're thinking if you're just going to stay silent. The house is a mess, and I don't know what to do. As my wife, it's your duty to take care of it." He said this right in front of my father, who looked shocked. Bart had just confirmed everything I had told him. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Normally, you should be apologizing." Bart stared at me, genuinely clueless. "Why should I be the one apologizing to you? You're the one who left, and you're the one not doing any housework. I went out of my way to come here after you acted so selfishly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He really had no idea how wrong he was. I realized then and there that there was no saving this situation. "If you really think like that," I said, my voice firm, "then there's nothing more to discuss. Let's divorce." With that, I handed Bart the divorce papers I had prepared after returning to my parents' house. "Divorce? Why are you saying this all of a sudden?" he stammered, taken aback. "All of a sudden," I replied, incredulous. "Don't be ridiculous. Do you have any idea how much you've hurt and tormented me? If anything, I should have asked for a divorce a long time ago. You've made me do everything you didn't want to do, ignored our child, and barely contributed to the family budget. You can't support a family of 3 on just $500 a month," I said, my frustration boiling over. "How can you not understand that? It's because you always put yourself first, isn't it?" Bart looked stunned. He clearly hadn't expected me to be this angry. But you've been making ends meet with what I've been providing. And the meals have been decent lately. Did you really think I wasn't doing anything?" I shot back. "I've been working remotely because what you provide isn't enough." "Huh, really?" Bart said, genuinely surprised. I realized that I couldn't provide a better environment for David if I didn't take action, so I started looking for a job I could do from home, I explained. I found a position as an English teacher. I grew up in the US, so I'm fluent in English, and I attended international schools in Japan before studying English literature at university. Teaching was a natural fit for me. I continued. I didn't just want to teach the basics, I wanted to make learning English enjoyable. So I studied Western movies and music, creating my own teaching materials based on phrases used in everyday life. I tailored my lessons to each student's interests, whether they loved movies or music, and it really clicked with them. Soon, more and more students were asking for my help. Bart's eyes widened as he began to grasp the situation. I had no idea. "How much are you earning?" "About $4,000 a month," I replied, watching his expression shift from shock to disbelief. "What? That much?" he stammered. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm making a lot more than you are now, and I don't need to live with you anymore." Bart was stunned. He couldn't believe that his own wife, whom he had always viewed as beneath him, was now earning more than he was. "Why am I so miserable?" he lamented. "What's with this sudden change? My colleagues are getting promoted before me, and even my juniors are advancing. They all think I'm an idiot, and on top of that, you earn more than I do. I sighed deeply. So what? Huh. It doesn't matter if your salary is lower or higher than those around you, I said. What's most important is whether you and your family are happy. For David and me, it doesn't matter if you're not being promoted. What matters is that you make time for us and ensure you can provide for us with what you have. I continued, I don't want you to hurt me just to protect your own pride. Shut up. A man's got to fight his own battles, Bart retorted. At that moment, my dad, who had been silent until now, spoke up. So you're trying to boost your own self-esteem by taking out your stress at work on my daughter. You spend money on your hobbies and clothes to relieve your stress, while neglecting your family. Bart shifted uncomfortably at my dad's words. My daughter and grandson deserve better, Dad continued, his voice firm. The most important thing for a husband and father is to be a pillar of support for his family. But you've only thought of yourself. I can't entrust my precious daughter and grandchild to someone like you any longer. Now sign the divorce papers and leave. Dad's anger was palpable. He had tried to remain calm for my sake, but he had finally reached his limit. Bart signed the divorce papers, trembling under the intensity of my father's anger. After a hasty, "Oh, I'm sorry," he left quickly. And just like that, our marriage came to an end. Later, a mutual friend informed me about Bart's claims. He was telling people, I dumped my wife because she was useless. But at work, everyone was already familiar with Bart's reputation. They dismissed his complaints, knowing full well what kind of person he was. No one wanted him as a boss, so he remained stuck in his position with no promotions for years. One day, a new employee asked Bart, "You've been here for years and haven't been promoted? Are you just a new graduate who joined recently?" Bart was ridiculed and left early, his face flushed with embarrassment. It seemed clear to me that once someone becomes an adult with a twisted personality, it's not easily fixed. Determined to raise David with love and care, I vowed to use Bart's example as a lesson in how not to behave. David, with his bright and carefree smile, seemed worlds apart from Bart. To protect that wonderful smile, I promised myself I would work hard every day. Bart's foolishness and need to protect his own petty pride had only led to the destruction of his family's happiness. Yet, I was grateful that I managed to divorce him swiftly. With the money I earned, I was confident I could support myself and David. I was optimistic about our future and hoped we would continue to thrive and find happiness together. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and we'll see you in the next video.